It depends. Yep, I'm a bit of a Star Wars nerd, and I'd consider myself a fan since some of the content really impacted me, yet some other I found pretty bad. Now, Star Wars ranges widely in quality and has a very reactive fanbase that can be summed up with the famous
"So uncivilized."
Since Disney bought Lucasfilms in 2012, it has produced a whole lot of content, and each of them produced polarized reaction from the community. Some of the fans call Disney Star Wars trash or even worse, so let's talk about the content since the Disney takeover to see how it really is. Perhaps by far the most controversial content, to say the least, is the sequel trilogy. Now, building it was a challenge since it had to satisfy expectations and make money after the Lucasfilm purchase. Many people were excited when this new lore was introduced, but as the films went on, the trilogy didn't seem to lead anywhere, and today a lot of people are saying these are pretty bad movies. So let's talk about it, beginning with The Force Awakens. One thing I noticed at the beginning is a good build-up of a new threat. The First Order is a revival of the Empire in a kind of Waffen-SS version, and right in the beginning they massacre a village. Kylo Ren is introduced as a new villain who notably stops a blaster round in the air. One of the things we see is some humanization of the new stormtroopers. We're introduced to two new and original characters. Finn is a rogue stormtrooper who flees the First Order and who helps another main character, the Resistance ace pilot Poe. We haven't seen these kinds of characters in the foreground before, so it's interesting. And another mostly good element is Kylo Ren. He's not a copy of Vader, a strong and solid villain, but rather a conflicted villain who tries to copy Vader. Kylo's in competition with General Hux for authority and seniority in the First Order. And I always like this kind of inter-villain bickering, so I liked it here. And then we have the mysterious Snoke, kind of an extended version of the Empire hologram in Empire Strikes Back, and much bigger. And he seems interesting for the mystery around him. And that's for the interesting characters. Now the main character, Rey, a lot has been said, everyone said it, she's a Marisu. Honest Trader said it well.
She's a multilingual, expert mechanic / ace pilot / force-using badass.
Who's so good at everything it makes her character completely uncompelling.
How dare you!
Even the escape with the Falcon. For the first second she can barely handle it, and then she flies it through a wreckage in a way that would make Maverick blush.
There. Come on, man, do some of that pilot shit!
That was some of the best flying I've seen yet. Right up to the part where you got killed.
See? Even Maverick needed to grow. And can we talk about the Falcon? I know A New Hope had a lot of coincidences, but Solo and the Falcon were just a random guy with his ship. The random guy helped the hero, and that's what made him great. Here the two leads stumbled upon the legendary ship, then immediately later stumbled upon Solo, a legendary man who's been looking for the Falcon for years. Some people answer that the Force does it, but it seems like Cenarium Force. Now much has been said how the story was a rehash of the first films, and again, Honest Trader said it well.
Featuring a desert orphan finding a cute droid with top secret information, who escapes the Empire thanks to the Millennium Falcon, visits a shady cantina, learns about the Force from a tiny alien, watches a man in black kill her mentor, then helps destroy a Death Star by deactivating a shield generator so that X-Wings can make a trench run.
Now the movie ends with important questions that could determine if the universe is well built or not. Who is Snoke and what does he want? How did he turn Ben Solo to the dark side? Who are the Knights of Ren? Who are Rey's parents? How did Luke get there? And how did Maz get Luke's old lightsaber that fell on Bespin? And the two next movies will answer, who cares? The next movie was directed by Rian Johnson, and it shows. The style and substance is much different, and the story goes in a direction we didn't expect. I'll begin with the good side. It's interesting to see Rey be attracted to the dark side and flirt with Kylo. She's not a Marisu anymore, and she spends the movie training. And what I found interesting is the idea that anybody can have the Force. Rey's parents are said to be nobodies. You don't need to be a part of a big Jedi or a Sith family to be powerful, and that's how the movie ends. Also, Johnson excels at gorgeous visuals. You know the many great shots and plans in this that make it a spectacle. Now, on the bad side, it spends so much effort trying to make visually impressive shots that all logic is just sucked out. Now, a good video has been made about it called The Military Analysis of The Last Jedi by King Emperor Penguin. And also Generation Tech has a few videos on this and pretty much everything they do is good. So I'll go over it quickly. The movie begins with the First Order catching the Resistance in the middle of an evacuation. The First Order has many ships, including a massive dreadnought that can one-shot any Resistance ship, and of course tons of TIE fighters. Now, as in the rest of the movies, the villains are in Disney mode. You know, the
Haha, we could easily destroy the good guys, but we'll do it in the evil but inefficient way so they have time to escape and beat us.
Hux does virtually nothing. All of his ships are in the mode, and the Resistance escape while managing to destroy the dreadnought. Hux, by the way, is not a threatening leader anymore. He's become kind of a dumb punching bag, so the First Order doesn't feel threatening and we don't feel much tension. Poe gets reprimanded for disobeying orders and losing bombers, but it's just dumb. He sacrificed a couple old obsolete useless bombers to destroy a ship that will have destroyed every Resistance ship in doing so in chase. And then, of course, Admiral Holdo. Nothing makes logical sense about her. In the chase, neither. The First Order fleet just trailed the Resistance, waiting for them to run out of fuel. Why can't they go any faster? Why don't they send part of their fleet in the micro-hyperspace jump to ambush? Why are laser shots in space arching? Okay, and if only a handful of TIE fighters manage to do so much damage, why don't they send any more? And Luke, he comes in to distract the First Order and gets the Resistance to escape, but why doesn't he just say so instead of making them guess and lose time? Why is everyone so bad? But the shots are gorgeous again. Doesn't make any sense, but it's looking good. And then you have the throne scene, which is straight out of Return of the Jedi. The nostalgia critic made good fun of this. It's the old,
Look at your friends dying in space, so join me now.
with the scarred leader showing his true power and getting killed by his apprentice. And of course, the infamous Finn and Rose sequence. They get tasked to find a guy to help in the chase, so they go on a casino planet, find another guy, and it finally amounts to nothing in the story. The sequence is not interesting, the relationship between them is not interesting, and oh my god, that scene. Finn was about to sacrifice himself to save his friends, and he would have fulfilled his arc of running away from the First Order to dying to protect his friends. Rose interrupts that by saving him, they would be dead, really, they would be dead. And giving him the most ridiculous line possible.
That's how we're gonna win. Not fighting what we hate. Saving what we love.
Notice how Finn then manages to drag her across miles right in front of the First Order walkers. I guess they were just posing there for the amazing shot. For a lot of people who like the sequel, The Last Jedi is their favorite of the trilogy, but personally, all this kind of lack of logic and bad writing got on my nerves. Then we get to the final movie. Definitely the most hated, and for a good reason. The editing is so fast and nervous, you don't have time to realize what's going on, it goes everywhere without explanation, and basically it's just a big patch-up job. The thing is, Johnson closed a lot of doors that Abrams opened in the first movie. Rey refused to join the dark side, Snoke is dead, Rey's past is said to be irrelevant, and the Finn Phasma confrontation never went anywhere. So what did Abrams do? He brought Palpatine out of nowhere, not even bothering to make a proper explanation. Even Snoke was unimportant. Rey is then Palpatine's granddaughter, I guess why not? He explains his evil plan and tells Rey to do it, completely dumb. He raises a massive fleet out of nowhere, each with a complete crew and planet-destroying gun, because, you know, we all need a planet destroyer to be destroyed to have some sort of stake, so let's put 1,000. The Resistance charges with horses on a Star Destroyer. I won't even ask anymore. Then a big rebel fleet shows up of my ass and destroys the bad guys. Oh, and Finn and Rose are completely irrelevant now. I don't mind for Rose, but I do mind for Finn, who originally was interesting. Now, The Last Jedi's message was that descendants wasn't important, but this one says that you must be a Skywalker or a Palpatine to be strong with the Force. I didn't even talk about the questions of coherence in the franchise about new force powers and hyperspace ramming. And even in the movie, they do something in the scene and 10 minutes later, oh no, if only I could do that. So as everyone said, there was a complete lack of direction for the sequels. It had some potential, but it just disappeared in a mess. Disney tried to rush them without a clear vision and it ended up like this. So that's the main reason why a lot of fans say Disney Star Wars sucks. Still, 2 more movies were produced outside of the trilogy, so let's check them out. Rogue One, set right before the events of A New Hope. It focuses on the people who found the Death Star plans. And no, Bothans didn't die for this Death Star, they died to bring information about the second one in Return of the Jedi. Rogue One is interesting because it gives us context and depth around the Death Star. We see Imperial internal rivalries, I always like to see that, and most of all it gives more importance to its eventual destruction. Instead of just seeing it blow a random planet we never saw like a balloon, it destroys a whole region of a planet which we saw before, with its people and events. And many people dying and getting the plans, so destroying it is even more important. The movie in the first half tends to go from place to place and doesn't want to settle in until the final act. The characters are okay, but are made to be forgettable. We don't know much about any of them and they don't give particularly emotional scenes. But still, it doesn't detract from the film's greatest elements. The shots give us a feeling of immersion everywhere we go, and most of all, the last act is so good. The rebels infiltrate the planet where the plans are, and it gives us some real military battle-oriented scenes, with both rebels and troopers taking cover, which is a rare sight. The Death Troopers notably are threatening, from their design and the fact that their very first shot hits. The rebels also battle in space in an incredible manner. Tarkin, remade in okay but weird CG, arrives with the Death Star and destroys the base, including the protagonist and the Death Star's construction director. And of course, the one scene that tops it all, the Vader scene. And in terms of fighting, it's perhaps the most balanced, because you know, in the originals at least, A New Hope, it was a bit of poking, and then in the prequels it was a circus show. Here it's straightforward, literally, efficient, and extremely threatening. So perhaps not the best movie of the franchise, but overall very good and a nice addition. Now that's a movie that's at the same time good overall yet unwanted. The thing is, Han Solo's charm was being a mysterious outsider rogue who finally joined the cause. So giving elaborate backstory is not the best idea. And don't get me wrong, I enjoyed several elements in this. Lando, played by Donald Glover, was fine. His relationship with Han, how Han won the Falcon, how he met Chewie, all that I think is alright. Not his name though, that was just dumb.
Solo.
And most of all, it explains to us everything. We don't need to know how he got his gun, his clothes, and his dice in an epic adventure. He could have bought them in any spaceport convenience store and it would have made the same impact. The adventure itself is enjoyable, not great, not terrible, but it makes me laugh how hard the film tries to throw us its winks about well-known franchise characters. Of course, if you saw Clone Wars or Rebels, you know that Maul survived. But here, if that wasn't evident enough it was him, he shows his lightsaber for no reason.
Do you get it? It's Maul!
And then the references to Jabba when they talk about a big shot gangster on Tatooine.
Tatooine.
And bring it up several times so we understand. So in short, it was a good but forgettable movie. It was Disney's worst box office in the franchise though. Now for some reason, Kathleen Kennedy's main lesson learned was that they shouldn't cast younger actors to portray famous characters. Why? Aaron Reich did a good job and Ewan McGregor is celebrated today for doing Obi Wan in the prequels. That wasn't the problem, only the premise of the film. Now, Clone Wars was an incredible series, I didn't expect that. My friend recommended it to me and I was interested, but still, it was a cartoon. So it took for me to see Ahsoka and Cad Bane in live action to decide I should understand the characters and watch the series. I love most of it, it has some of the best content in the franchise. So Disney produced season 7 and it ranges from okay to incredible. There are 3 arcs of 4 episodes. The first is action-oriented. Rex discovers that Echo is alive and captive and goes to rescue him with the help of the Bad Batch, a group of special clones who don't obey by the rules. Now, I wasn't convinced by the Bad Batch because it's, you know, the typical kind of bad company, A-team kind of group, or even like a cartoon I used to watch. You have the balanced, serious leader, the cocky sharpshooter, the strong but not too bright guy, and the nerd. Still, it worked and I had a good time. Then you have the middle arc with the sisters. It follows Ahsoka after she left the Jedi Order and helps a pair of sisters trying to make ends meet. The sisters got themselves mixed in criminal activities involving the Pike Mafia though, and they get captured. They escape and get captured again. And again. Which is the reason why this is the weak story. It doesn't leave much of an impact and the Pikes feel incompetent. But the incredible part is the final act. It runs in parallel with the events of Revenge of the Sith, so you know what's coming. Ahsoka, along with former members of Death Watch and a detachment of clone troopers, go to secure Mandalore and capture Maul. There are some incredible battles, and the duel and relationship between Ahsoka and Maul is captivating. Maul is captured and brought aboard a cruiser, but then comes Order 66 while Ahsoka is with Rex.
Find him. Find him. Vibes.
Find him!
This scene is just unbelievable. The sheer tension, you're on the edge of your seat, and the last scene, which has a big impact. So although it was uneven, what a conclusion to the series. The best content at the right moment. I then watched Rebels, which feels a lot more Disney. It's much less dark, and the visual style, which has gotten to beautiful levels in Clone Wars Season 7, were kinda scaled back to a more children-oriented style. Although I didn't find it as good as Clone Wars in terms of serious stories, there was more humor. If you get over Chopper's sounds, which are annoying to some, he can be hilarious. With his arms you can see the emotions and he can really be a dick. Rolling on Ezra's finger while he was clinging there was one of the highlights for me. In my case, I didn't get too much on board with the main characters, especially Kanan, so when serious stuff happened to them, it didn't affect me as much as it should. The best moments I found were with veteran characters from other content. Vader, Maul, Rex, and Ahsoka. Some of the villains were really for children, but others were pretty interesting. Thrawn, of course, but also Callus, who at the beginning was kind of typical, but who became more interesting as he got to know Zeb. There were intense moments, despite the plot armor ending, and Rebels I think is a good addition to the franchise. I'll be honest, I wasn't attracted to it when I learned about it. The Bad Batch didn't reach me that much in Clone Wars, and I thought that Omega would be, the usual annoying sidekick who's only there to get in trouble. But finally, I absolutely loved the season. I found it really interesting to see how the group lived through Order 66, how it affected them, with Crosshair the only one who has turned by the chips and who becomes an enemy of his former team. There was a lot of action but also touching moments. I was surprised to love Omega in this. She evolved, she helped the team, and her moment with Wrecker showing her affection right after he tried to kill her while under mind control. It brings me close to tears. She's a true sister. Now I'm making this video as they are releasing the first episode of Season 2, so I hope that it'll be as good as the first. I'm finishing here with the cartoon series. Tales of the Jedi is an interesting format, some kinds of mini episodes to give context. The first season features 3 episodes about Ahsoka and 3 about Count Dooku. And I'll be honest, this is another case of a cartoon blowing my expectations. In the Ahsoka episodes, the first episode is okay but predictable. In the second one, where she trains to be able to survive surrounding enemies shooting at her, something made me react strongly.
How long was I out?
An hour.
An hour?
Yeah, Jesse really tagged you.
Sorry, Commander.
The foreshadowing, man, even if it was made after Clone Wars. The third Ahsoka episode feature an Inquisitor looking for her, and who has the design and the attitude of the summum of badassery, right until he gets completely wrecked. But it's understandable knowing how good a fighter Ahsoka is. Then the Dooku episodes, honestly the highlight of this. It shows in 3 small episodes how Dooku slowly came to break the rules with a desire to do good, but was ultimately corrupted by Palpatine and became a villain. It's crazy how small bits of content like that can change our perception of a character entirely. Now this is the one that really got me into the Star Wars universe. But when it came out, I just let it pass. After the sequel movies and with the hype around Baby Yoda, I thought it would be just another pointless commercial thing. I watched it a year later and I just loved it. When they say that Star Wars is space western, this is a great illustration. I'm a huge fan of Western movies, both classic Westerns and spaghetti Westerns, and Mando pretty much acts like the man with no name. He's a bounty hunter bound by a strict code and who finds this small being as one of his bounties. The relationship they slowly develop is the best thing about the show, but I loved everything else. The acting, especially showing emotions with the helmet on, the stories, the effects, everything is good. And I don't mind the Monster of the Week format, you know, when in some episodes they have new characters and new stories. Some legendary characters like Boba Fett, Luke Skywalker and Ahsoka appear in the second season, but each cameo is done very well. There's always a good reason for them to show up, they're not just thrown in randomly for crowd pleasing, but it achieves just that. Now, as I said, Boba Fett appeared during the last 3 episodes of Season 2 of Mandalorian. It was a great comeback. Boba helps Mando recover Grogu, and after the credit, they teased that he took control of Jabba's palace and would get his own series. The thing is, with Boba, he didn't receive a lot of screen time in the movies. He looked cool, talked to Vader, and was cunning. And then in Return of the Jedi, he died like a chump. Now, if Maul survived and Palpatine somehow returned, it's not surprising for a guy like Boba to survive getting swallowed. Still, he didn't have much personality before The Mandalorian. That's what Boba Fett tried to develop and what was controversial because he becomes a good guy. It has some merits, there's a good video about it called The Good of Boba Fett, but there's a tendency with Disney to make rogues good guys like in Solo. The scene at the end of The Mandalorian didn't point to that at all, as he massacred everyone in the room. And of course, everybody talked about it, the mods on scooter scenes. For me it wasn't a great moment, but it didn't distract me that much. The structure of the story did. You have sequences of Boba's flashbacks in his life among the Tuscans, which was quite interesting. Then his life in the present, which was less interesting. And the best part of the series, 2 Mando episodes. They wanted Mando to progress at the same time, but they made 2 whole episodes around him. They're great, but it's a bit distracting from the Book of Boba Fett. Yet when you think about it, Boba was in 3 episodes of The Mandalorian. Still, Mando is a more compelling character and we're more interested to see how he evolves. His new ship and all. We don't really have a sense of threat because it's not really clear what the threat to Boba is. At the beginning we had Hutts, then they went away and the Pikes came in, and we ended up with Cad Bane as a main villain. Now, Cad Bane's scenes were great. His entrance with the western aesthetics, the tension during the confrontation with Cobb Vanth, his demeanor, voice acting, I loved it all. I love this small bit.
Did you convince the Marshal to remain neutral?
Just the way he says it.
Yes.
Now he's the main reason which got me into watching Clone Wars in the other cartoons. Now, as I said, episodes 5 and 6 were great, but episode 7 I'm pretty mixed. There was the final battle with the Pikes and Cad Bane, with a lot of satisfying pew pew. But you had cases of Deus Ex Machina like 4 or 5 times, and practically no secondary protagonist ever dies, so we feel no sense of threat from the Pikes. So the series wasn't bad at all, it just wasn't very good altogether. Another uneven series, and again is the danger of developing legendary characters. When you announce you're making this kind of content, people have their own perceptions of a character and their own expectations, so they're bound to be disappointed if it's not perfect. Now, Obi Wan Kenobi is a special case. Some scenes were great and brought me close to tears, and some others were just laughingly bad. Story-wise, I love seeing a traumatized and tormented Kenobi, that sounded weird, being exiled and finding his mission difficult. But then you have Reva who made a completely convoluted plan to get to him, just so she could stab Vader in the back. Okay. And the story doesn't tie that well with the originals. Otherwise, I don't have much to say about it because I'm rather indifferent. I didn't find it awful nor good, and it didn't change my love of Andor content, especially what was next. This is another surprise and a special one because initially, nobody cared. Nobody was eagerly waiting for this like they were for Obi Wan and Boba Fett. Nobody said, "Yes, finally the first episode of Andor." But like I said, since he wasn't a legendary character, there were no expectations. From what I see, there are two opinions on this. The vast majority loved it, but the others found it slow and boring and they couldn't get into it. And I understand both opinions. In my case, I was just blown away, but I understand negative reactions since this is a different style of Star Wars in the pacing and the content. It's no longer about Jedi or Sith or well-known characters, and there's not that much action in it. There are no moments like I don't even have to show it, you know what I'm talking about. Andor is not a series only about the title character, but rather about people living in the Empire at its peak. People like workers, criminals, corporations, politicians, spies, prisoners, and the first rebel groups before the Rebel Alliance was created. People are not in black and white, good versus evil in this. There are unethical methods used by everyone, but different ones for different purposes. And I was surprised that I was rooting a bit for the evilest character, Del Ramiro, as she was trying to climb in the ISB. There are 12 episodes, and that's when the slow pacing comes in. Andor is slow but made in such a way that it builds up in detail the events to come. So when the events come, you're on the edge of your seat hoping for it to work, and it's so satisfying when it does. There are 4 main arcs, I'd say, and each time there's a build up towards an episode. There are a lot of characters in this, but since you spend so much time with them, you get to know a bit of each. There's a lot of dialogue, and honestly, it's so well written, I would just say incredible out loud. Obviously, I can't show them entirely, but you know them.
And I won't. You're better off not knowing. Or perhaps you find my politics a bit strong for your taste. Smile?
They were killed in a fight. They're in a brothel, which we're not supposed to have, the expensive one, which they shouldn't be able to afford, drinking Rivnold, which we're not supposed to allow.
How long we hang on, how far we get, how many of us make it out, all of that is now up to us.
Burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see.
And even the small moments are so satisfying because they're so well built up.
Never more than 12.
While others are very troubling or sad. So again, I understand why some people didn't get on board with it, as it is different, but I find it to be one hell of an addition to the franchise, and for me, one of the best. And that's content like this that makes me say that Disney Star Wars doesn't suck altogether, it's uneven. Now I understand why some people don't like Disney for the poorly written sequel of course, and some other bits of content they didn't like, but in my case, I rewatch the content I like, and I don't rewatch the content I don't like. Simple as that. Thank you for watching, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you around.